There is a peculiar cruelty that exists in this world, one not of weapons or wounds, but of twisted stories, a cruelty that strikes not with fists, but with the blade of falsehood. It is the torment of being wronged in silence and then painted as the villain in someone else's story. You know that pain, that sting when the one who hurt you turns around and cries louder, not from pain, but from the attention it draws. And in that cry the world leans in, not to comfort you, but to believe them. You stood in the fire they lit for you, while they wore innocence like a mask. You watched their lies parade as truth, their guilt masquerading as pain. And what did you do? You stayed silent. You swallowed your story because dignity meant more than revenge, but deep inside you asked, why, God? Why does the world believe them? Why do the innocent suffer while the guilty are applauded for their performance? But truth is not always loud. It does not clamor for attention. It does not beg to be seen. It waits, patiently, silently, like a lion in the tall grass, waiting for the right moment to roar, and it will. Not by your hands, but by the divine hand that sees all and forgets nothing. You see, God is not blind to injustice. He sees the private tears, the slander whispered in corners, the betrayal masked by smiles. He watches the theater of falsehood unfold, and he lets it run, only to expose it when it thinks it has won. The same God who allowed Joseph to be thrown in the pit, let him rise to the palace. The same God who was silent when Job was accused, spoke mightily in the end. God allows injustice for a time, not because he endorses it, but because he is preparing to vindicate the truth in a way no human ever could. You've been misunderstood, misrepresented, maybe even mocked. But take heart. For every lie they told, there is a truth preparing to thunder. For every audience that applauded their act, there is a moment coming when their masks will melt in the fire of consequence. And when that time comes, karma will not whisper, it will shout. The ones who harmed you and then wept before the crowd will learn that divine justice doesn't play favorites. Karma does not forget its address. It remembers the pain, it remembers the manipulation, and it comes not to destroy you, but to speak for you. So stop trying to correct every lie they tell. Stop exhausting yourself in defense. Let go of the need to explain your side to those already determined to misunderstand you. The universe bends toward truth. God bends toward justice. And when he moves, he does so with force. And when that divine wind blows, those who played the victim while stabbing you in the back will tremble, not because you exposed them, but because their own actions finally echo louder than their words. And the very people who once applauded their cries will watch the curtain fall, revealing not the wounded, but the wicked. Now, as we step into the heart of this message, let us explore the signs, the wisdom, and the path you must hold on to while you wait for the truth to roar on your behalf. Karma doesn't forget, it just waits for alignment. Karma is not chaos. It is not random punishment or cosmic revenge. Karma is order. It is alignment. It is the echo of every action, returning not when we demand it, but when the time is right. And that is what makes it so fearsome. Its precision. Those who hurt you and cried louder than you, those who wounded your soul and then played the innocent, they may seem to go on untouched. Their lives may appear stable, even blessed, but what you're witnessing is not grace. It is delay. A delay not born of mercy, but of alignment. The universe is not in a rush to retaliate. It calculates. It waits for the moment when the lesson will pierce deepest, when the illusion will crumble the hardest, when the fall will not just be seen, it will be undeniable. And that's when karma moves. You see, many believe that getting away with wrongdoing is a sign that God didn't notice, that karma has missed its turn. But that's where they are wrong. Because karma doesn't respond to timelines. It responds to truth. It moves when the truth they tried to hide is most needed to be seen, when the pain they buried in you has bloomed into wisdom, when your healing has made their lies irrelevant. That is when karma aligns. There's no satisfaction in watching someone suffer, but there is peace in knowing the truth has a way of surfacing. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to scream your story into deaf ears. The same universe that saw your tears will see to it that they do not evaporate unnoticed. They water the roots of justice. And when that justice rises, it does not come in pieces. It comes in full, like a wave that washes away the illusions they built to cover their sin. Karma never forgets the pain they caused. It remembers your sleepless nights. It remembers your trembling prayers. It remembers how you questioned your own worth because of the lies they fed to others. And while they perform for the crowd, karma sits backstage, waiting for the curtain to fall, waiting for the story to catch up with the truth. Because when that alignment comes, no amount of acting can protect them from the consequences they pretended would never arrive. Karma is not just about justice, it's about clarity, and when it speaks, even the ones who once cheered their lies will pause and see. Because what karma exposes, it does not do subtly. It declares, it confirms, it rebalances. So rest. Do not worry if it looks like they're winning. It only seems like that because the story isn't over. Their actions may have gone unnoticed by the crowd, but not by God and not by karma. The delay you're witnessing is not ignorance. It is preparation. Karma hasn't forgotten. It's waiting for the perfect time to speak truth in a way the world can't deny. And when it does, the same lips that spread lies will taste the bitterness of exposure. That's not vengeance. That's alignment. That's divine order. Expanded point 2. Those who hurt you and pretend to be the victim are writing their own downfall. 600 words. There's a strange irony in deception. It always believes it can outlast truth. Those who hurt you and then stood before others as the wounded think their performance is genius. They weave their stories with skill, cast themselves in the role of the misunderstood, and relish the sympathy they gather. But what they fail to understand is this: the role they've chosen is temporary, and every lie they've used as foundation will eventually collapse under the weight of truth. When someone hurts you and pretends to be the victim, they are not only manipulating others, they are violating something sacred. They are tampering with trust. They are reshaping reality in their image, ignoring the cost it inflicts on your soul. And while it may seem like they're succeeding, all they are doing is constructing a fragile castle of illusions, a castle built not on stone, but on sand. God sees that, and He lets them build it, not because He approves, but because He knows what they don't. Every stone they lay in that false narrative becomes part of their eventual collapse. It's not that God is idle, it's that God is just. He allows them to believe they're safe in their deception, so they never see the fall coming. Those who play the victim after causing pain are not living freely. They are living in fear. Fear that their truth might surface. Fear that the person they tried to destroy might find their voice. And as they continue their act, they forget one thing. The truth doesn't need an audience to be true. It just needs time. Their downfall isn't caused by your revenge or retaliation. It's caused by the very lie they built their identity on. Because a lie, no matter how polished, eventually decays. And when it does, it smells of rot. Even those who believe them will begin to question. Doubt will spread like a crack in a mirror. And soon, all that's left is a reflection they can no longer control. They think they're ahead of you, that you're behind because you didn't fight back. But in reality, they're racing toward a cliff while you are walking a path that's steady, secure, and divine. Their downfall is not yours to orchestrate, it is theirs to inherit. Every false tear they shed, every twisted tale they told, it's all recorded, not in books, not in videos, but in spiritual lore, and spiritual lore does not lose files. You may feel like their lies have painted you into a corner, that no one understands what really happened, but remember, justice is not always seen immediately. Sometimes the most perfect justice is delivered in silence, in unexpected moments, in the humbling of the proud, in the exposure of the actor. So don't envy their spotlight, don't wish for their applause, because while they perform, truth prepares, and when the time comes, the very script they wrote will turn on them. Their own lies will become the very reason they fall, not because you cursed them, but because they betrayed what was real. They are writing their own downfall, and when it comes, you won't need to say a word. Life will say it for you. God will say it through them. Karma will say it to them, loudly, clearly, unmistakably. Truth has its own divine timing and cannot be silenced forever. The most painful part of betrayal is not just the act itself, it's the silence that follows. The silence of those who once stood with you, but now believe the lies. The silence of the truth, buried beneath layers of deception and manipulation. It's in this silence that doubt creeps in, and you begin to wonder if justice will ever find its voice. But the truth is not gone. It is not defeated. It is simply waiting for its divine appointment. Truth does not arrive at the convenience of man. It does not run toward chaos or shout for attention in crowded places. Instead, truth waits with quiet confidence. It waits for hearts to open, for masks to slip, for the moment when it will not just be heard, but believed. And when that moment comes, it speaks with the force of thunder, cutting through confusion, cutting through performance, cutting through the thick fog of false narrative. There are times when you feel crushed beneath the weight of lies, when those who betrayed you walk freely, unbothered, as if they've won. But you must remember, God is not a spectator to your pain. He is the keeper of truth. And while he may appear silent, he is orchestrating a moment in time where the truth will roar in a way that cannot be ignored. A moment that will not just clear your name, but expose theirs. You cannot force this moment. You cannot accelerate it, and you must not try to carry the burden of vindication. Because when man seeks to prove the truth, he often loses his peace. But when God reveals the truth, he brings peace and justice together, like twin flames that purify what was corrupted. The reason truth often delays is because it aims for permanence. It doesn't want to simply correct a story. It wants to destroy the lie completely so it can never rise again. That's why you've had to wait. That's why your voice has felt buried. Because when God brings the truth to light, it will not be something others debate. It will be something they cannot deny. And when it comes, it won't need a stage. It won't need applause. It will simply be known. You won't have to fight anymore or plead with anyone to believe you. The truth will stand on its own, and it will stand tall. So if you are tired of waiting, If your heart is weary from the silence, remember this: truth is not lost. It is gathering strength. It is gathering momentum. It is aligning with time, with witnesses, with events that are yet to unfold. And when the divine moment arrives, it will shine a light so strong, even shadows will confess. No lie can live forever. No performance can sustain itself eternally. Truth is eternal, and it will always find its way. Sometimes it walks, sometimes it runs, but it never forgets where it's going, and it never forgets who it's going to rescue. Expanded point 4. Your silence was not weakness, it was protection from further harm. 600 words. There is a sacred kind of silence that only the deeply wounded understand. It's not the silence of defeat or the silence of fear. It's the silence of wisdom. When someone hurts you and then plays the victim, your first instinct might be to defend yourself, to shout your truth from the rooftops, to confront every lie with fire. But something within you held you back. Something urged you to stay quiet, and that was not weakness, that was divine protection. You see, not every battle is yours to fight. Not every accusation is worth your breath. When someone's intent is to distort reality, to manipulate perception, then even your truth can be twisted in their hands. Arguing with a deceiver is like throwing pearls before swine. They trample your truth and leave you more wounded than before. That's why God allowed your silence. Not because He wanted you to suffer, but because He was shielding you from a deeper war. When you choose silence in the face of falsehood, it is not because you are powerless. It is because you have chosen to preserve your strength. You have chosen peace over noise. You have chosen to let God speak for you instead of exhausting yourself trying to fix what others broke. And while they twisted the narrative and gained attention, they also revealed their character. Because only the guilty rush to speak the loudest, only the deceiver is desperate for a stage. But the one who is truly wounded does not need to prove their pain. They carry it in their spirit, in their prayers, in their quiet strength. Your silence has protected you in more ways than you know. It has kept you from saying things you'd regret. It has kept you from being dragged into their games. And most importantly, it has allowed time for truth to gather strength without interference. Sometimes, silence is the only language heaven understands. It's in your stillness that God moves. It's in your restraint that angels fight. And while the world may interpret your silence as surrender, God knows it as surrender to Him, and that's the most powerful weapon of all. Your silence has built a sanctuary for your soul. It has allowed you to focus on healing rather than hatred. It has shown that you do not need to stoop to their level to rise above the pain. That's something they'll never understand, because they thrive on chaos, while you found your refuge in calm. They thought your silence meant they'd won, but what they didn't see was the fortress God was building around you. A fortress not made of bricks, but of truth, timing, and divine protection. They spoke to hurt you. You stayed silent to heal. And that difference is everything. Now, as time unfolds, the silence they mocked will become the very echo that haunts them. Because when the truth finally speaks, it will rise from your quiet strength, not from their loud deceit. Your silence was never empty. It was filled with the whisper of angels and the watchful eyes of God. The pain they caused has built your character. The lies they told are building their judgment. Pain has a way of molding us, not in the moment of agony, but in the days after. In the long, silent nights where your thoughts scream louder than the world outside. In the places where your heart feels abandoned, misunderstood, or unfairly targeted. Pain builds something in you that comfort never could. It builds resilience. It builds clarity. It builds depth of soul. And while you were hurting in silence, the very sorrow they caused was quietly crafting your character. They thought they were weakening you. They thought their betrayal, their lies, and their distortion of your truth would break your spirit. But instead, they were unintentionally sharpening your discernment. You started seeing through facades. You learned the difference between surface loyalty and deep sincerity. You discovered the rare value of peace. The pain they caused became the fire that refined you, not the flame that consumed. Character is not formed in ease. It is forged in adversity. It's when the people closest to you twist your story, when the truth is dismissed, when justice feels far away. That is when who you are truly emerges. You chose not to become bitter. You chose not to become like them. That choice alone reveals more about your soul than all the false narratives they crafted ever could. And while you were building your integrity in secret, they were building something else entirely: judgment. Every lie they spoke, every eye they deceived, every heart they misled, it became a brick in the walls of their own reckoning. Because deception is not sustainable, eventually it turns on the one who wields it. The lies they spread have been recorded not by you, but by the unseen forces of divine justice. And those lies are not dissolving in the air, they're solidifying as evidence. There's no need to rush the process. Just as your pain needed time to become strength, their lies need time to become the verdict. While you've been healing and growing, they've been digging deeper into their illusion. And the deeper they go, the greater the collapse when truth comes. You've built your character with scars, with dignity, and with trust in God. And though it took everything in you to remain calm, to remain kind, and to remain faithful, it wasn't in vain. That restraint you practiced is the very reason your story will carry weight when it's finally told. And their stories, built on falsehood, will crumble at the first tremor of truth. So remember, your pain was not pointless. It built something eternal in you, and the lies they use to rise will become the very rope that pulls them down, not because you said so, but because truth demands it. They were writing a script they can't control, and when it ends, judgment, not applause, will greet them. Expanded point 6. When God lets karma speak, even the loudest liars are forced into silence. 600 words. There is a moment, undeniable and irreversible, when God steps in. It's not always with thunder or fire. Sometimes it arrives quietly, like a shadow stretching across their perfect stage. The spotlight that once made them feel safe now feels blinding. The applause they chased grows silent. Their lies, once rehearsed so well, begin to crack beneath the weight of truth. This is the moment when karma speaks, and when it does, even the loudest liars go quiet. The world may have listened to them first. People may have believed their stories, felt sympathy for their tears, and judged you in your silence. But the truth has a sound of its own. It does not need volume. It needs timing. And when God allows that timing, what you couldn't say for years will suddenly be understood without a word. Those who lie loudly often confuse volume with victory. They think the one who speaks first wins, but that only works when the author of truth remains silent. And God may be slow to speak, but he never stutters. When he reveals completely. There is no room for spin, no room for edits. There is only truth laid bare. The same people who watched you suffer without knowing the full story will be the ones to witness what truth really looks like. They'll remember how loudly the others shouted, how confidently they accused, how easily they cried on cue. And then, In the face of divine justice, they'll see those same voices falter. Because truth doesn't just expose facts, it exposes character. When God lets karma speak, He doesn't just clear your name. He reveals the condition of their soul. He lets the consequences match the crime. The very lies they use to gain sympathy become the seeds of their humiliation. The performance they gave so convincingly becomes the evidence of their guilt. Their script falls apart, not because you challenged it, but because life, in its divine design, refused to let it stand forever. And in that silence, when their voices fail and their audience disperses, you will find something else: peace. Not just the peace of being proven right, but the peace of knowing that you never had to stoop to their level. You never had to manipulate the story. You let God be the author, and His truth was louder than any accusation ever thrown your way. There is power in knowing that you waited, that you trusted, that you didn't panic when everyone turned their heads. And there is power in watching God restore you, not by tearing others down, but by revealing what always was. When karma speaks, it does so with evidence. It does so with timing. It does so with impact. And it never misses its target. No matter how loud they shouted, no matter how many believed them, they cannot escape the voice of consequence. Not when that voice comes from God. When God lets karma speak, even the loudest liars are forced into silence. There comes a moment in every great deception when the noise collapses, when the once booming voices of the manipulators tremble into a hush. It doesn't happen in the way you may expect, not with public outrage or dramatic confrontation, but with something far more powerful: divine silence. The kind of silence that overtakes them, not because someone shouted louder, but because the lies can no longer stand on their own. The people who once hurt you and cried the loudest, playing the victim to cover their sin, relied on volume. They weaponized their voice, not because they had truth, but because they feared truth. And that fear made them desperate to control the narrative before truth could find its way through the cracks. But here's the spiritual law they forgot: the louder the lie, the heavier the fall. God doesn't rush to silence them. He waits. He lets them believe the echo chamber of their deception. He lets them think the world is theirs to manipulate, because in His wisdom, He knows there is no greater collapse than the one that comes from the inside. When God lets karma speak, it doesn't scream, it whispers with precision. And that whisper shatters illusions more effectively than any thunder ever could. They will start to notice the shift, not from you, but from everything around them. Relationships will falter, confidence will wither, the stage they built to showcase their lies will begin to crumble. Their influence will start to fade. Why? Because karma doesn't just expose lies, it removes the comfort that allowed them to exist. And as they scramble for control, they will discover something devastating. Their words hold no more weight. Their cries no longer stir sympathy. Their performance has grown stale. The people who once believed them will begin to question, not because you convinced them, but because God allowed the truth to become visible, even in silence. That is the beauty of divine justice. It doesn't need to destroy, it simply reveals, and what is revealed cannot be unseen. Their downfall won't be because of your retaliation, but because of their own arrogance. They handed themselves over to deception, and now deception refuses to protect them any longer. So if you've ever questioned whether God sees, whether He remembers, whether He will act, remember this: God doesn't forget. He doesn't ignore your pain, and He doesn't abandon truth. He simply waits for the moment where justice will not just be served, it will be undeniable. Let them lie, let them shout, let them play their role to the very end, because when karma speaks, even the loudest liars fall silent, not by force, but by exposure. Now that you've walked through the fire, carried the burden of truth in silence, and watched others twist your pain into performance, understand this: your silence was never a sign of weakness. It was a declaration of strength, a signal that you were not willing to fight a battle unworthy of your soul. They hurt you, then painted themselves as the wounded. They spread lies and lived freely, as though they would never answer for the damage. But God was never unaware. He saw the nights you couldn't sleep. He heard the prayers you whispered through clenched teeth. He counted every tear you never allowed the world to see. And he was writing a response that needed no punctuation from you, because it would be final. You do not need to chase justice. You don't need to shout your story into a world full of deaf hearts. You were never meant to fight this battle alone. The same God who watched you fall will be the one to raise you up. The same God who witnessed the injustice will orchestrate the reversal, and he will do it so masterfully, even you will stand in awe. Let karma speak. Let truth rise, let silence be your shield. Because when God moves, no lie stands. When God speaks, no mask remains. And when God vindicates, the loudest voices are reduced to whispers of regret. They hurt you and played the victim, but now it is God's turn. And he will not just speak, he will declare. Not just defend you, he will crown you. Not just reveal the truth, he will restore it. So walk with your head held high, not because they see your worth, but because God never stopped seeing it. The lies they built will collapse. The roles they played will end, and your truth, your sacred, bruised but undefeated truth, will stand in the light, untouched by their noise. Because in the end, the stage belongs to God, and he is the only author who never fails to finish the story right.